Imagine you wake up one morning, open your laptop, go to use the tool you've been paying $20 a month for, the tool your entire coding workflow depends on, and it's just gone. No email. No warning. Just an X where a checkmark used to be. That's what happened to thousands of Claude users this week. And honestly, the real story is a lot bigger than a pricing page update. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I will be talking about Anthropic, the company behind Claude, and what has genuinely been a pretty wild week for them. But before we get into the story, let me give you some context. Because this matters. As of February 2026, Anthropic is pulling in $14 billion in annualized revenue. That's up from just $1 billion 14 months earlier. Claude Code alone, just that one product, is already doing $2.5 billion a year. And 70% of Fortune 100 companies are running on Claude. So this is not a struggling startup. This is one of the fastest growing software companies in history. And that context matters, because what we're seeing this week isn't weakness. It's what scale stress actually looks like up close. Let's break it down. On April 21, 2026, developers start noticing that Claude Code has quietly disappeared from the Pro plan. And the support documentation was updated site-wide. An archived version, however, from April 10th still showed Claude Code included under Pro. 10 days later? Gone. Understandably, people lost it a little bit. Because Claude Code isn't some side feature. It's the command line tool that lets developers run Claude as an actual AI coding agent. Entire workflows depend on it. It's generating $2.5 billion a year. It matters. You know what? One tweet flagging the change racked up nearly 900,000 views. And guess what? Anthropic's head of growth, Avasare, jumped on X and said, "Relax, this is just a small A/B test, affecting about 2% of new subscribers. Existing Pro and Max users aren't affected." But here's the problem with that explanation. The pricing page wasn't showing something different to 2% of people. Everyone saw the same change. The support docs were updated globally. When journalists asked Avasare directly why the documentation was changed site-wide for a 2% test, he didn't respond. The company's spokesperson also declined to answer. That's not a 2% test. That's a global rollout that got caught. So, did Anthropic handle this well? Honestly, no. Not even close. And it wasn't just the pricing page. On the exact same day, April 21st, a separate report came out that Anthropic had terminated an entire company's 60-person team from Claude without any warning, citing a vague usage policy violation. No advance notice. No dedicated support. Just a Google form for appeals, and no explanation of what the company actually did wrong. 2 incidents. Same day. Both with zero communication to the people affected. Now, to their credit, Anthropic did reverse the visible pricing change within about 24 hours. The checkmark came back. And Avasare did eventually admit it was a mistake that the landing page and docs were updated globally for what was supposed to be a limited test. But here's the thing, one of the most respected developers writing about Claude pointed out that the experiment is still running. It's just no longer visible to the rest of the world. The trust damage, though? That already happened. An undeclared price change is always worse than a declared price hike. Always. Even if the math is the same, the feeling is completely different. And OpenAI noticed. Sam Altman actually replied to Avasare's thread with, "Okay boomer," making it pretty clear that OpenAI would be happy to pick up any developers who felt burned by all of this. But buried in that same thread from Avasare was something more honest, and honestly, more interesting than the pricing change itself. He said the way people actually use Claude subscriptions has fundamentally changed. When the Max plan launched a year ago, Claude Code wasn't included, agents that run for hours weren't a thing, and the whole platform was designed for heavy chat usage. Now, engagement per subscriber is way up. People are running long autonomous agents, multi-hour background jobs, entire development pipelines. And the current subscription model just wasn't built for any of that. So this isn't a sneaky pricing grab. It's a company whose product usage evolved faster than its business model. Which is a real problem, but it's a very different kind of problem. And you can see the pressure everywhere. Claude's paid user base absolutely skyrocketed in the first couple of months of 2026. Record growth. But the infrastructure is feeling it. Anthropic's API uptime over the past 90 days is sitting around 98.9 to 99.1%. That's from their own status page. For context, OpenAI is running above 99.9%. In enterprise SaaS, that gap translates to roughly 87 more hours of downtime per year. Some enterprise customers have already started moving workloads because of it. On top of that, Anthropic recently changed how usage limits work during peak weekday hours, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. An Anthropic engineer said this affects roughly the top 7% of heavy users. So if you're pushing it hard during the workday, you've definitely felt this. Now there's one more piece worth talking about, because it's been confusingly covered. Anthropic just released Opus 4.7. It's genuinely a strong model, better at long coding sessions, sharper instruction following, improved vision. Real improvements. But it uses a new tokenizer. And here's what that means in plain English. A tokenizer is how the model breaks text into chunks before processing it. Opus 4.7's tokenizer maps the same text to more chunks than the old one did. Anthropic did disclose this. In their migration guide, they said it's roughly 1.0 to 1.35 times more tokens for the same input, depending on content type. But independent measurements on real Claude Code sessions found it landing at 1.3 to 1.45 times more tokens in practice. A community benchmark with nearly 500 submissions found about a 37% jump in effective per request costs on average. So, the subscription price hasn't changed. Your quota hasn't changed. But how far that quota actually goes? That dropped. Meaningfully. Especially on code-heavy work. And it was technically disclosed, just not exactly front-page news when Opus 4.7 launched. Now, here's the part a lot of the coverage this week just kind of skipped over. One day before all of this drama, on April 20th, Anthropic and Amazon announced one of the biggest compute deals in the history of the AI industry. Anthropic committed over $100 billion to Amazon Web Services over the next 10 years. In exchange, they're securing up to 5 gigawatts of compute capacity for training and running Claude. Amazon is putting in $5 billion right now, with up to $20 billion more on the table tied to performance milestones. For scale, 5 gigawatts is roughly the equivalent of 5 nuclear power plants worth of computing capacity. And some of that capacity, specifically the new Trainium 2 chips, is expected to start coming online this quarter. Meaningful capacity by end of year. You don't make a $100 billion commitment if demand is weak. You make it when demand is overwhelming and you're scrambling to catch up. So what does all of this actually mean going forward? If you're a casual Claude user, you're probably fine for now. The changes so far have hit power users the hardest. If Claude Code is core to your workflow, expect less predictability. That likely means quotas that feel smaller, limits that get stricter during peak hours, and new tiers showing up for heavier usage. The current $20 plan almost certainly wasn't designed to absorb what developers are running on it today. For teams using Claude in production, the risks are more strategic. Uptime gaps start affecting real systems. Tokenizer changes effectively behave like price increases on your API bill. Which is why we're already seeing larger teams move toward multi-vendor setups, not replacing Anthropic, but not relying on it alone either. So look, here's where I actually land on all of this. Anthropic has had a genuinely rough week from a communication standpoint. The Claude Code situation was handled poorly. The same-day termination of that 60-person team made it look worse. The Opus 4.7 tokenizer quietly made subscriptions less valuable for power users. And uptime is below where it needs to be for an enterprise-grade product. But a meltdown? A collapse? Come on. This is what it looks like when one of the fastest-growing companies in software history runs face-first into a demand problem it wasn't fully ready for, and now it's dropping the biggest compute deal in its history to fix it. The question that actually matters, and the one I'm going to keep watching, is whether that Amazon capacity shows up fast enough before trust starts to erode in a more serious way. That's the real story. Thanks for watching.